I have a name. I have a degree from Columbia University. I run the Meridian Health Foundation, which means I sign the checks that keep half the community health programs in this city running. I speak 3 languages, including the one his mother uses to talk about me when she thinks I'm just standing there, not understanding a word. But to Shin Un-hee, I was one thing, black. My name is Dr. Lenora Caldwell, and I heard every word. Let me tell you how I got there. The morning it all started moving was a Tuesday in October. I was in the middle of reviewing a stack of grant applications when my phone rang, and the program officer on the other end said she needed to switch to Korean because her supervisor had just walked in and the office was loud. So I switched to Korean. Mid-sentence, same voice, same cadence. 15 years of a language will do that. You stop thinking about it. You just use it the way you use anything you have had long enough to own. My assistant Marcus was standing in the doorway when I wrapped up the call. He raised one eyebrow exactly the way Marcus raises one eyebrow, which means he is recalculating something. Anything you want to tell me? He said. About the grant pipeline or about my language skills? Both, eventually. I smiled and went back to the applications. Grandmother Mabel always said you don't tell people who you are. You let them find out. She said it the way she said everything, from her kitchen table on East Gaston Street in Savannah, in the house her mother owned before her, in the house nobody in our family has ever had to beg for. The Caldwells have been building things in this city since Reconstruction. Mabel Caldwell sat on the city council for 12 years. Her late husband, Robert, argued civil rights cases that still get cited in classrooms. She never talked about any of it. If you brought it up, she'd wave her hand and say, "That was just the work. I have been trying to be that woman my entire life." That evening, I had the Korean American Community Health Initiative Gala on my calendar. Meridian was the primary sponsor, which meant I was attending professionally, which meant I was there to represent the foundation, shake the right hands, and be visible in a room full of people my organization supported. I dressed accordingly, not to announce anything, just to be present in the way the work required. I did not expect what walked through that room. The gala was the kind of event where every name tag was a credential and every table conversation was a negotiation wrapped in pleasantries. I had done my rounds, spoken with 3 program directors, left 1 business card, given out 0. I was standing near the window at the edge of the room with the Atlanta skyline behind the glass, giving myself exactly 7 minutes of quiet before the next round when I heard a voice to my left. "You look like you're mentally planning your exit." I turned. He was Korean, well-dressed in a dark suit without a tie, somewhere in his early 30s. Calm eyes, the kind of face that didn't need to announce anything. "I'm between conversations," I said. "There's a difference." Something in my chest registered amusement before I decided whether to show it. I looked at the small sponsorship badge on his lapel. "Park Development Group, you're here representing the family business?" "J1. He offered his hand. "And yes, you, Nora." I shook it. I did not offer my title or my organization. Neither did I feel the need to. He did not immediately pivot to networking. He did not glance at my badge or reach for his phone. He looked at the skyline for a moment, then back at me. "What do you think about the healthcare corridor proposal?" he said. "The city's rezoning near West Side." I looked at him more carefully. "What do you know about it?" "My firm does development work in that area. I've been watching the community health angle. The infrastructure doesn't match the funding promises." He paused. "I might be wrong." "You're not wrong," I said. We talked for 40 minutes. Not networking talk, real talk. He asked questions that told me he had actually read the reports I helped produce. I answered them honestly, which I don't do with everyone at these events. He pushed back twice, both times with something worth considering. I pushed back once. He laughed when I did it. "You know this area better than most people in this room," he said. "I know what the data says, and I know what the community tells us that the data misses." He was quiet for a moment. "That's an important distinction." I noticed the way he said it. Not flattery, just agreement from someone who had been thinking about the same gap. A program director found me at that point and pulled me into a conversation I couldn't avoid. I excused myself. J1 nodded, easy about it, no pressure. 2 hours later, at the end of the evening, he found me near the coat check. "Can I walk you to your car?" A simple question, not a performance. I said yes because I wanted to. We walked out through the lobby and across the parking deck. The Atlanta night was cool. He didn't fill the silence with small talk, which I appreciated more than he knew. At my car, he stopped. "I'd like to see you again," he said. "Not for a connection, just for the conversation." I thought about it for exactly 1 second. "All right," I said. He smiled, and it landed somewhere in my chest in a way I wasn't prepared for. I drove home telling myself not to make too much of it. I had no idea what was waiting on the other side of that door. He took me to dinner 3 weeks later, and then again the week after. By our 4th time together, he had met Marcus at the foundation offices when he came to pick me up, and Marcus had given me the look that meant he approved, which I filed away. By the 6th week, J1 was telling me about his family. "My mother wants to meet you," he said one evening. "She's hosting a dinner. It's small, just family." I heard something careful in his voice. I chose not to name it yet. "I'd like that," I said. He looked at his hands, then at me. "She's traditional." "I know what traditional means," I said quietly. "I'll be there," he said. "I just wanted you to know. I wore a dress my mother Diane would have approved of, the kind that says I was raised right without saying another word about it. My mother ran the toughest middle school in Chatham County for 22 years. She could walk into any room and make it feel organized. And I learned from watching her, brought the right gift. I was warm and gracious and completely fluent in the social language of that kind of gathering because Grandmother Mabel raised me to walk into every room with my full self. Shin Yoon Hee met me at the door with a smile so bright it almost looked like welcome. She held my hand for a moment, looked me over, and then turned to the couple standing behind her in the hallway. "Yobo," she said to her husband, "and you remember Mrs. Kwan from church. This is Jaewon's girlfriend." She paused, a pause with intention in it. "My black daughter-in-law." She said it cheerfully. She said it like it was an introduction complete in itself. Like that single word accounted for everything worth knowing about the woman standing in her doorway. I heard J1 go still beside me. I kept my face open and easy, the way Grandmother Mabel taught me. I smiled at Mrs. Kwan, who was already giving me that particular brand of performative warmth that is more exhausting than hostility. "So lovely to meet you," Mrs. Kwan said, with the brightness of someone who wanted credit for her own welcome. "Yoon-hee has told us so much." I wondered what that meant. I had a feeling I would find out. I did not look at J1. "Not yet. Some battles are not won in the hallway. Some weapons don't need to be drawn right away." They had no idea what was standing in that doorway, but they were going to find out. The dinner did not get easier from there. Yoon-hee moved us all into a formal dining room where the table was set with the kind of careful precision that announces effort. I noted the placement cards. I noted that mine read J1's girlfriend, where everyone else had the actual name. I sat down and unfolded my napkin and decided, as I had decided at the door, that this was not the moment. The food came out in courses, and Yoon-hee's warmth was a practice thing, turned on and off depending on who she was addressing. With her husband, Park Sung-ho, she was deferential, the way a woman manages a man who holds the purse strings. With Mrs. Kwan, she was expansive, the social creature in her natural element. With me, she was performing tolerance the way some people perform charity, loudly enough to get credit. "Nora, you must tell us certain," she said at one point, beaming down the table. "Where are you from? Your family?" "Savannah," I said. "Georgia. My grandmother's family has been there since Reconstruction." A small pause, not long enough to be rude, long enough to register. "How lovely," Yoon-hee said. Then she turned to Mrs. Kwan and said something that made Mrs. Kwan smile, And the smile was the particular kind that keeps a secret. I understood the social architecture. I was the exhibit. I was not the guest. J1 sat beside me and said nothing. He ate carefully. He asked me once if I wanted more water, quietly, like a private conversation happening next to a louder one. I looked at him and saw the tightness around his jaw, the careful way he was holding himself. He knew. He just could not seem to do anything about it. After dinner, I thanked Yoon-hee for the food in the evening. I meant it, which is the thing about being raised the way I was raised. Gratitude is not conditional. I meant it even as I noted every single thing that had happened at that table. In the car, J1 drove for a few minutes without speaking. The city moved past the window. The silence between us was a specific kind of silence, the kind that has weight. I should have said something, he said finally. Yes, I said. I did not dress it up. I'm going to talk to her. I looked at him. J1, I need you to understand that if this is going to be a pattern, I need to know now. Not because I can't handle it. I can handle it just fine, but I need to know what I'm choosing. He turned to look at me at a red light. His eyes were honest, and that mattered. I will talk to her, he said. I promise. I held that promise and drove home with it, and I told myself it was enough for now. I had no idea how many more times I would need to make that same calculation. The second date was his idea, but on my terms. He had offered a restaurant. I had suggested the Pont City Market rooftop with takeout containers from the Korean place 3 blocks over. He showed up exactly on time with 2 cups of tea he'd found somewhere nearby and a look on his face that said he had enjoyed the assignment. We sat on a low bench facing the skyline, and I was unreasonably happy about it, which I acknowledged to myself privately and said nothing about out loud. Tell me about growing up in Savannah, he said. It was the right question. It was the question someone asks when they actually want to know something, not when they want to establish credentials or fill silence. I told him about East Gaston Street, about the kitchen at Grandmother Mabel's house, where every important Caldwell conversation had happened for 3 generations, about helping Auntie Pat at the church kitchen on Saturday mornings before the bakery was the bakery, when it was just Auntie Pat and a standing mixer and a dream she would not explain to anyone who doubted it. She sounds like someone I would be afraid of, J1 said. You should be, I said. But she'd like you. She likes people who show up. He was quiet, thoughtful in the way he got quiet, where it never felt like absence. What made you choose philanthropy? You could have been in medicine law. I am in medicine, I said, and in law, in a way. The foundation work sits at the intersection of both. But I went this direction because I watched Grandmother Mabel do community organizing for 50 years with almost no resources. And I thought, what if someone gave her what she deserved to have? What if that was the job? I looked at the skyline. That's the job. That's what I do. He did not say anything immediately. When he did, it was, that makes sense. That makes complete sense. Something settled in me at that. The being understood without having to explain yourself further. I filed it carefully, the way I file things that matter. We talked for 3 hours. We covered his work in structural design and the argument he was currently losing at the firm about a community-facing project his father saw as impractical. He talked about Korea with the kind of complicated feeling that belongs to people who grew up between 2 places, fluent in both and fully at home in neither. I recognized that feeling from the inside, though for different reasons. At some point, I was ordering dinner on my phone and I slipped. I switched mid-sentence into Korean without thinking because the man on the other end of the line from the restaurant spoke it and it was simply faster. I finished the order, ended the call, and looked up. Jae-won was looking at me the way you look at something that has just changed shape. You speak Korean, he said. Fluently, I said. A beat. 2. His expression moved through something I couldn't fully read. How long? 15 years. Columbia had a Korean studies program. I minored in it. I've been working with Korean American grantee organizations for 7 years, which keeps it current. I watched him. Is that a problem? He shook his head slowly. No. Then more carefully, does my mother know? I've given her no reason to think I do. Another pause. He looked at the skyline. He looked back at me. Would you consider not telling her? I studied him. Why? Because if she knows, she'll be more careful. And right now, what she says when she thinks no one who understands her is listening, that tells me things. He looked uncomfortable with the word things, like he knew it was inadequate. I want to know what she's actually saying. It was a strange thing to ask. Not wrong exactly, but strange. He was asking me to keep a weapon holstered, and he was asking it for reasons that served him more than they served me. All right, I said. I won't tell her. I did not say. I was never planning to. I did not say. I already know what I'm going to hear. Some things don't need announcing. He reached over and touched my hand briefly, the back of his fingers against mine, and I felt it all the way up my arm in a way I did not intend to. Thank you, he said. I told myself not to make too much of it. I made too much of it. I drove home that night thinking about those 3 words and the weight they carried. I didn't know then what I was actually agreeing to hold. The second family gathering was larger. A Sunday lunch, the Parks, and 3 neighboring families from their church community. I wore something I liked and arrived with Jae-won, and Eun-hee met us at the door with the same bright smile and the same physics of introduction that reduced me to a category. Everyone, this is Jae-won's girlfriend. Upbeat. The beat had become a habit now. My black daughter-in-law. I watched it land on the room like a stone dropped in water. Some faces smiled accommodatingly. Some registered something they quickly smoothed over. Jae-won stood beside me and looked at the floor. I kept my face composed. Grandmother Mabel's voice in my chest, steady. Later, during the meal, I was standing near the kitchen doorway with a glass of water when Eun-hee leaned toward her friend Mrs. Kwon and said quietly, in Korean, "She carries herself like she thinks she is someone. Park Sung-ho is furious. A son who brings this home." Mrs. Kwon made a sound of sympathetic agreement. I took a sip of water. I set my glass down. I noted the sentence the way I note relevant data. Filed it. Mrs. Kwon turned to me a moment later with her warmest smile, the one that required a certain kind of effort to sustain. "Nora, you must be so happy to be part of such a warm family. Eun-hee is so accepting." "She's very welcoming," I said, and smiled and let her have it. That night in the car I waited. Jae-won drove for 7 minutes before he said, "She did it again." "She did," I said. "I'm going to say something at the next one." I turned toward the window and watched the lights go past. He had said that last time, too. I was beginning to understand the pattern. He meant it every time he said it. And when the moment came with his mother's eyes on him and his father's expectations in the room and the whole architecture of who he was supposed to be pressing down on his shoulders, the words did not come. I was not angry at him. I understood it. But understanding a thing does not make you immune to it. Things between us in private were different. I want to say that plainly because it matters. When it was the 2 of us, he was the person who had found me at that window at the gala. Curious, unhurried. He paid attention the way that costs something, the kind of attention you give when you have decided someone is worth it. He remembered details. He asked about the grant applications I mentioned in passing 3 weeks earlier. He brought me coffee the exact way I took it, which I had only mentioned once. He made me laugh with a dry observation about city planning that assumed I would follow the reference. And I did. And the fact that he assumed I would struck me as quietly significant. I had not been letting myself fall. I was too careful for that, too familiar with the geography of wanting something and finding out the ground was not solid, but somewhere between the Ponce City Market rooftop and the coffee and the way he said, "That's an important distinction," like he meant it, I noticed that I had stopped holding myself at a measured distance from this man. That frightened me a little. I noted it and kept going. Minji's name came up for the first time in passing. His sister, younger by 3 years, Park Development Group's communications coordinator, sharp and social in the way some people are sharp and social as a strategy. I had not met her yet when I noticed one Thursday that I had been removed from a group chat that Jaewon had added me to some weeks earlier. The chat was called Park Family and had become mostly meal planning and calendar coordination. Now it showed me as having been removed by an admin. I looked at my phone for a moment. Then I put it down and went back to the grant application on my desk. I did not tell Jaewon immediately. I wanted to see what would come next. What came next arrived 2 weeks later. Jaewon came to pick me up for dinner, and as I was getting ready, he mentioned, with the casual tone of someone mentioned the weather, that his mother was hosting another family dinner that weekend, and that his sister had reached out to a few people. "Who's coming?" I asked. A small pause. "Some family friends." I looked at him. He held my gaze for a moment and then looked at the floor, which was its own answer. "Jaewon." "Han Yuna will be there," he said. "She's a family friend. She and my mother are close." I knew the name. He had mentioned it once briefly with the kind of brevity that signals a longer story underneath. "Your ex," I said. "From 3 years ago. She's been a family friend for a long time before that." "Does your mother arrange these things, or does it just happen naturally?" He was quiet, which was also its own answer. I thought about Grandmother Mabel at her kitchen table, speaking about Savannah families and the women who ran them. "Baby girl, some arrangements don't need a signature to be official." I had been around enough careful mothers to recognize the architecture of this particular arrangement. Yoon-hee was keeping the door open. She was making sure I could see it. "I'll be there," I said. I want to say I was unbothered. I was not entirely unbothered, but I kept that to myself because the woman being replaced does not make herself small by showing she noticed the replacement strategy. You walk through the door, you hold your posture, you let the arrangement say what it intends to say, and you watch who behaves with integrity and who does not. That is what Mabel Caldwell raised me for. The family dinner was on a Friday evening, and Han Yuna was already there when we arrived, seated in the living room with a glass of wine, comfortable in the way someone is comfortable in a space that was once familiar. She was beautiful in that particular Korean way that Yoon-hee would have assembled as the ideal, polished and traditional, and the right kind of everything in a room full of people who had decided what the right kind of everything looked like. Yoon-hee made the introductions with the same practiced brightness. "Nor, you know, Yuna, I'm sure Jaewon has mentioned." "Of course," I said. I smiled at Yuna, who smiled back with the kind of warmth that carries an undercurrent of assessment. We understood each other perfectly and said nothing about it. Yoon-hee had arranged the seating at dinner with Yuna on Jaewon's left and me on his right, which was a calculation so transparent it almost deserved admiration. I sat down, I ate the food, I participated in the conversation with grace and intelligence, and when the conversation turned to topics that excluded me, I listened with interest and contributed when I could, because I was raised to hold a room with competence, not with performance. At one point during the meal, Yoon-hee glanced toward Yuna and then toward me and said something to Mrs. Kwon in Korean, her voice just below conversational volume, the way you speak when you have decided no one around you understands. She said, "Look at the two of them. Yuna is what a Park son should have. This one, she has ambition, I give her that, but ambition is not family." Mrs. Kwon made a sound I recognized. Not agreement exactly, more like the performance of it. I drank my water. I noted the sentence, filed it behind the first one. After dinner, while the men were in the study and the women were in the living room, Yuna positioned herself near Jaewon's empty chair, and when he returned, found reasons to address him privately, leaning slightly in his direction, speaking at a volume that required him to lean back. I watched from across the room. I watched Jaiwan receive the conversation without redirecting it, without creating distance, without once looking over at me to close the gap. I excused myself to find the restroom and stood in the hallway for a moment by myself, eyes closed, breathing. Grandmother Mabel, baby girl, the room will always show you who people are if you let it. Watch and be quiet. The time for speaking comes later. I went back to the living room. I sat down. I held myself steady. I had no idea then that this was only the second repetition of a pattern that would play itself out 6 more times in the months to come. The day trip was his idea, offered on a Sunday morning with a sheepishness that I recognized as an attempt at repair. He drove us out to the Chattahoochee National Forest, and we walked a trail through light-filtered pines for 2 hours, saying things that had nothing to do with family dinners or silent patterns or Korean phrases muttered across rooms. He told me about the project his father had finally approved, a mixed-use development with a community health center built in, a compromise he had been working toward for 2 years. He was proud of it in the quiet way he was proud of things, not announcing the pride, just letting it be present. That's the kind of work I want to do, he said. Not just build things that profit people, build things that work for the people around them. I listened to that and felt the thing in my chest that I had been keeping at a careful distance do something I could not entirely control. That's what I believe too, I said. That's the entire premise of what I do. He stopped walking and looked at me. The trees were quiet around us. The afternoon light came down in narrow columns through the canopy. I know, he said. I've known that since the gala. We walked without talking for a while after that. It was the kind of quiet that doesn't require filling. His shoulder brushed mine twice on the narrow part of the trail, and neither of us adjusted our path. I told myself I was not falling. I had not quite convinced myself. What I had not yet fully reckoned with was what happened when we got back to the world that contained his family. Those 2 hours in the trees were real, but the rest of the hours of our life were also real. I was about to find out which one had more weight. The church community found me, the way organized exclusion always finds you, quietly, in groups, through the accumulation of small things. It was a Sunday evening social at the Korean American church that the Park family attended, a gathering to which I had been invited in the same casual, take it or leave it way that was itself a statement. We walked in and I was immediately visible in all the ways I was always visible in these spaces, but the only Black woman in the room, standing next to a Korean man whose mother was 3 steps ahead, performing a welcome I had not been extended. The women of the church community had clearly been briefed, not explicitly perhaps, not with a memo, but the body language had been coordinated. They spoke to each other in Korean around me. When English appeared, it was for the purpose of questions. Where are you from, originally? What do you do? Are you Christian? Each question delivered with the sweet patience of someone confirming a suspicion rather than gathering information. I answered each one honestly and simply. Savannah, Georgia, I said. I work in nonprofit administration, I said. And yes, I said Greater Bethel AME, which was my grandmother's church, and my mother's church and mine, which tends to be more Christian per square foot than most buildings in any denomination. The woman who had asked the third question smiled with the careful smile of a woman recalibrating her positioning without admitting she had needed to recalibrate. Yoon-hee found the moment irresistible. She drifted over with her brightest smile and said to the cluster of women gesturing at me, "You see, this is what I mean. My Black daughter-in-law, she's quite accomplished in her way." A gentle pause. We are very open in this family. She said it like generosity, like it cost her something she was willing to pay. She was building social capital in real time, spending my identity like currency. And the women in the circle nodded with the collective warmth of a community that had decided to admire her for her tolerance. I smiled. I stood there in my full self, which they could not see because they had not looked. And I noted what this room would look like one day when it found out who I actually was. That day was coming. I just needed to be patient. On the way home, Jaewon drove without speaking for a long time. Then, my mother shouldn't have said that. No, I agreed. The accomplished in her way. I know what it was. Nora. He stopped at a light. The red was very red against the dark of the street. I hear you. I see it. I'm trying to figure out how to. I know you are, I said. Not coldly, just evenly. Because I did know, and I also knew the trying had not yet become doing. Keep figuring, he nodded. He drove. I turned towards the window and let the city move past me. Minji I pieced together from the edges. I had never been given direct access to her. What I had were the symptoms: the removed group chat, the Han Yuna invitation, the dinners where the seating arrangements arrived fully formed without consultation. But the photograph was the thing that made it plain. Jaewon's phone showed me one evening when he was showing me something unrelated, a family photograph from a birthday dinner I had attended. I remembered the photograph being taken. I had been in it, standing at the end of the table next to Jaewon in a green dress I liked. In the version on his phone, the frame had been cropped so that the left side, where I had been standing, was gone. The photograph showed the Park family and 3 guests. I had been removed with the clean efficiency of someone who had decided, with a crop tool and a scent button, that I simply did not belong in the picture. I looked at the photograph. I handed the phone back. Did Minji send these to the family group? I asked. Jaewon looked at the photo. Something passed over his face. Yes, I see. Nora, I'll talk to her. You do that, I said, and I kept my voice easy because ease was the right register for this. Not hurt, not accusation, just the calm noting of a pattern from someone who has been noting patterns her whole life. What Minji did not know was that the person she was erasing from family photographs had 3 grants pending review at the Meridian Health Foundation that bore her fingerprints. Not her fingerprints specifically, but organizations she had recommended, clients she had championed, a PR firm with strong community ties that was positioning itself for a major healthcare account. Every door in that space eventually ran through my office. She was erasing the woman who would one day be the gatekeeper to everything she needed. I did not think about this with satisfaction. I thought about it the way I think about any piece of information. I noted it and I let it be. Sung-ho had been a silent presence at most gatherings, the kind of man who demonstrates authority through stillness rather than speech. He sat at the head of tables. He looked at me with an expression that was not unkind, but was definitely not welcoming. The specific expression of a man who has made a decision about you based on criteria he considers practical and permanent. I learned what those criteria were when Jaewon came to me one Tuesday evening, more subdued than usual. He sat down on my couch and held a cup of tea and looked at the middle distance for a while before he found the words. My father spoke to me today, he said. I waited. He said that if the relationship continues in the direction it is going, it will affect my position at the company. A pause. He said he needs to know I understand what the Park family's standing in this community requires. I understood the language. It was old language, dressed in new clothes. He means he needs you to marry Korean. He didn't say it that plainly. He didn't have to. Jaewon set his tea down. I told him that I understood the family's standing and that I also understood my own mind. I looked at him. There was something there, something solid in the way he said it. What did he say? Nothing. Which with my father means the argument isn't over. I sat with that for a moment. The financial architecture of Jaewon's life was entirely built on Park Development Group. His salary, his position, his professional identity, the projects he cared about, the community health center he had fought to include in the new development, all of it moved through his father's approval. What Sung-ho had just done was put his hand on the lever. I thought about what that pressure did to a man. I thought about what it had already done to him in rooms where I needed him to speak. "You know what I'm not going to do," I said. "I know," he said quietly. "I'm not going to make it easier for you by pretending that pressure doesn't exist, and I'm not going to make it harder by asking you to destroy your livelihood. But I need you to understand that the pressure on you does not get transferred to me. I don't carry his disappointment. That belongs to him." He looked at me for a long time. "You're the most clear-headed person I have ever met," he said. "I was raised by clear-headed women," I said. Something in the room shifted then. Something had been building between us for months, and it was not only the chemistry of two people who had found each other surprising and true. It was also the weight of everything pressing against them from outside, which made the inside more precious by contrast. He reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, slowly, like he wanted to and had been wanting to, and I felt the warmth of his fingers near my face and did not look away. We did not kiss, not yet. There was still something in the air between us that needed a different moment, a cleaner one, but I was aware of the inches between us, and so was he, and we both let it be, and that restraint was its own kind of declaration. I thought about that moment for several days afterward. 3 weeks later, Yoon-hee was at another family gathering, this one a Sunday lunch at the home of a church family I had not met before. And at some point during the afternoon, she drifted toward the kitchen with Mrs. Kwan and said in Korean, in the way she always said things in Korean when she thought the room was safe, "Her family is from Georgia, Southern people. They have that church warmth, but no real history." A pause. "Nothing like what we've built." I was standing 8 feet away with a plate of food. I set the plate down and breathed. The Caldwells had been building in Savannah since Reconstruction. Grandmother Mabel's husband had argued civil rights cases that still lived in academic citations. My mother had spent 22 years building young people into something harder and brighter than what they had started with. Auntie Pat had turned a church kitchen into 3 businesses that employed 14 people. "Nothing like what we've built," I breathed again, steadied. I thought about what Grandmother Mabel would say. "Baby girl, let them keep building that story. The truth doesn't need a publicist. It just needs time." I picked up my plate. I went back into the dining room. I smiled at the woman nearest me and asked her about her work. And I noted the sentence in Korean precisely, word for word, added it to the growing ledger that only I was keeping, and I kept going. The evening with the photographs was quieter. Jae-won had come over after a long week at the office, looking like he needed to be somewhere that did not require anything from him, and I understood that feeling exactly. I ordered food, and we sat in my living room, and I went to the closet and brought out the box I keep at the back of it. Family photographs. Caldwells across 5 generations. The East Gaston Street house in summer, in winter, in the 1950s when the fence was different and the oak tree was younger. Grandmother Mabel at 22, before the city council, before the years that made her the legend she became. Just a young woman with a direct gaze and something in her posture that said she already knew she was going to outlast everything that tried to reduce her. I put them on the coffee table between us. Jae-won leaned forward. He looked at them slowly, the way you look at things when you understand you're being let in somewhere. He did not make small talk about them. He asked careful questions. "Who is this? What year? What happened to this building?" "This is the church kitchen," I said, pointing to a photograph of Auntie Pat at maybe 25, covered in flour, laughing. "Before the bakeries. This is where it started." He looked at it for a long time. "I want to meet her," he said. "She'll take exactly one look at you and tell me what she thinks." "Good. I want to know." I smiled at that. Then I looked down at the photograph of Grandmother Mabel, and something moved in my chest, something warm and deep and complicated, the feeling of being known through people who made you. He was sitting close enough that I could feel the warmth of his shoulder near mine. The lamp cast a quiet light across the room. The food sat forgotten. He turned slightly toward me, and I was aware of the distance between us, which was small, and his face, which was close, and his eyes, which were doing something particular that I recognized because I had seen it building toward this moment for months. "Nora," he said, and the way he said my name had a different quality in it. Lower, more careful, the way you say something you have been meaning to say. I turned toward him. Our faces were close. The photographs were between us on the table like witnesses. His hand came up slowly toward mine, and the air between us changed in the way that air changes just before something that cannot be taken back. Then his phone rang. He looked at it, his mother's name on the screen. I let out a breath so carefully that he almost didn't hear it. He looked at me, apology and frustration in his eyes, both of them equal. "I have to take this." "Take it," I said. He stepped away. I sat back and gathered myself and told myself that the moment was not gone, only delayed, but something had broken in the spell of it, and when he came back from the phone call, the room was a different room, and we both felt it. "She wants to know if we're coming to the family gathering Sunday," he said. "I'll be there," I said. I kept my voice easy. He sat back down beside me, and we ate our food and looked at the photographs together for another hour, and there was still something warm in it, something real. But the almost moment had passed, and I was left with the particular ache of a door that had swung nearly all the way open and then eased back to almost closed. I did not know then that the next opening would be the one that counted. Una's second appearance at a family gathering was coordinated with the precision of someone who had been placed there intentionally and knew it. She arrived before us this time, already in conversation with you and he when J1 and I walked in, and the warmth of the greeting was distributed differently, which told me everything about the evening's architecture before we sat down. At one point, Una found J1 near the hallway and drew him into what looked like a private conversation, her back slightly toward the room, her voice low. I was talking to one of the church women nearby, and I could see J1's profile, careful and polite, not giving her nothing, but not giving her the redirect either. I watched and said nothing. He came back to me 20 minutes later. He did not explain. I did not ask, but he took my hand at the dinner table and held it briefly under the tablecloth, a private gesture in a room full of public arrangements, and I held his hand back and let it mean what it meant. After the gathering, he told Una, quietly and directly, that the family gatherings were not the right space for private conversations, and asked her to respect that going forward. He told me this in the car, without framing it as heroism, just as something he had needed to do. It was small, but it was something. I noted it the way I noted everything, filed it in the column of things he was beginning to do alongside the longer column of things he had not yet done. I was building a picture. I needed to know if the picture was of someone who could be what this required, or someone who would always come close and then choose the easier path. I needed to know that before the ledger got any heavier. Sung Ho's collapse happened on a Saturday afternoon at the family home. J1 called me from the hospital, his voice more quiet than frightened, but I knew the registers of this man well enough by then to hear what was underneath the quiet. Cardiac event. Not severe, they were saying, but requiring immediate cardiology consultation and follow-up care. "He doesn't have a cardiologist," J1 said. "My mother's calling everyone, but the hospital's process is slow, and she doesn't know how to navigate it." I sat still for a moment. Park Sung-ho had spent the past several months making it clear, through his silences and his private conversations with his son, that he considered my presence in Jaewon's life a practical liability. He had not been cruel about it. He had been worse than cruel. He had been coldly reasonable, which is the tone adults use when they have decided to reduce another person to a problem to be managed. And now his son was calling me from the hospital because I was the person who knew how to navigate this. "I have a contact at Meridian Cardiology," I said. "Give me an hour." I called the department director. She owed me nothing officially, but we had built the kind of professional relationship where a call from me about a cardiology consultation got prioritized. I called in one of the quietest favors I had ever called in and arranged an appointment for Sung Ho that would have taken 3 weeks through normal channels. I did it without fanfare, without announcement, and without for a single moment considering whether he deserved it. He was the father of the man I was building something with. That was reason enough. I texted J1 the name and the appointment time. He called me back. "How did you do this?" He said. "I know people," I said. A long pause. "Nora, he needs good care," I said. "That's what matters." He was quiet for a moment with a quality of quiet I had learned to hear. Not the silence of someone who had nothing to say. The silence of someone who had too much to say and could not find the beginning of it. "I love you," he said. The words came out the way real things come out, not orchestrated, just there. And with them, something else, something lower in his voice. "I know I haven't been in public what I should be. I know that. I am working on it. But I need you to know that this, what we are, is the realest thing in my life right now." I sat with his words in the quiet of my apartment. Outside, the city was doing what cities do, moving through itself without noticing the particular gravity of this particular moment. He had said it, and I believed him. And I also believed that the gap between what he felt and what he was willing to do in public was still a gap wide enough to fall through. I did not say "I love you" back. I did not have that word yet, not for the version of him that existed in the world outside our private space. But I reached toward my phone and I said, "I hear you." And I covered his hand with mine, the only way you can cover a hand across distance, and the word was waiting somewhere inside me for the moment when he earned the public version of it. I did not know then that moment would almost destroy us before it saved us. The fundraiser where it finally happened was a Korean American Heritage Gala, a higher stakes version of every gathering that had come before. Not a church social, not a family dinner, a proper event with a venue and a printed program and people who mattered to one another in layered, complicated ways. Yoon-hee had been planning her outfit for 2 weeks. I knew because J1 had mentioned it with the particular exhaustion of a man who understood what that planning meant. We had arrived together, we had walked in together, and then we had been folded into the event in the usual way, which meant J1 moved towards the family cluster, and I moved into the space beside him, and Yoon-hee's orbit organized itself around its own center of gravity. The introduction came at the entry to the main hall, a couple neither of us had met before, longtime members of the church board, people whose approval Yoon-hee courted the way she courted all approval, loudly and with performance. "You must meet my son, J1, Yoon-hee said, turning with her practiced brightness. Then the pause. It never got shorter. It was always exactly long enough to set me apart from whatever came next. "And this is his girlfriend, my black daughter-in-law." She said it to a ballroom. She said it to 40 people within earshot of a microphone stand. I kept my face open. I kept my posture easy. I was the same woman I always was in these moments, the one who had been raised to hold rooms, to absorb pressure without broadcasting it, to store things carefully and let them find their proper time. Beside me, J1 had gone still. That stillness I knew like a second language by now. After the dinner, I found myself standing on the rooftop terrace that connected to the venue's 4th floor, a space I had discovered between courses while looking for somewhere to breathe. The Atlanta night was clear and warm, and the city stretched out below it in that way cities do, indifferent and enormous and alive. I stood at the railing for a while without needing anything from the view except the distance it offered from the room below. I heard the door open behind me. He came to stand beside me at the railing, not close enough to crowd me, close enough that I knew he had come specifically for this. We stood without speaking for a moment. Down below, the city moved through itself. Up here, nobody was watching. Nobody was arranging seating or managing introductions or performing anything for anyone. "Out here, you're just you," he said. His voice was quiet. I looked at the skyline. "I'm always just me," I said. He was quiet again. I could feel him deciding something. I know. He turned slightly toward me. I know that. And I know I don't show it in there the way I should, the way I want to. I didn't answer that. I let it sit. He was close enough that I could see the city lights reflected in his eyes when he looked at me. He had taken off his jacket somewhere, and the formality of the evening had come loose from him in a way I hadn't seen before. He looked like the man from the rooftop takeout and the forest trail, the one who showed up without needing anything from me except exactly what I was willing to give. Nora, he said. I turned toward him. There are moments that have been building for so long that when they arrive, you recognize them the way you recognize whether you've been watching gather for days. The air had a particular quality to it. The distance between us had a particular quality to it. I had been standing in this room for months in some form or another, waiting to see who he was going to be. I looked at him and I saw what I had always known was there and what he had never quite managed to bring into the open. And I made a decision the way I make all my decisions, clearly, on my own terms, with full knowledge of what it meant. I kissed him, not tentatively, not as a question. I reached up and I kissed him the way you kiss someone you have been choosing, quietly, in your chest for a long time. He went very still for one breath. Then he kissed me back, and there was something in the way he did it, careful and sure, and like he had been keeping it, like it had been waiting to be given back to me. We stayed like that for a long moment. The city below us did not notice. Up here, it was just the two of us, and the warm night and the particular quiet of something that had finally, properly arrived. When we pulled back, I looked at him. He was looking at me with something in his face that I had no name for and did not need one. He reached up slowly and brushed the side of my face with his hand, just the edges of his fingers, and I let myself feel it. I've been wanting to do that since the gala, he said. I know, I said. I made you wait. You didn't make me do anything, he almost smiled. You gave me something to work toward. I looked back out at the city. The warmth in my chest was the particular warmth of something that had been carefully held for a long time and could now set itself down. This changes things, I said. I know it does. I need you to understand what that means, what I'm choosing, who I'm choosing. I turned back to him because I don't do this part way. I'm not built for part way. I know. He said it like a promise. I need the man out here to show up in there too, I said. Someday. His jaw tightened the smallest amount, not in resistance, in acknowledgement. I'm working on that. I know you are, I said. And for that moment, in that clean rooftop air with the city spread out below us and his hand still warm near my face, it was enough. I looked at the lights and I let myself have it. The warmth of it, the realness of it, the fact of this man choosing me back. I had kissed him first because that was the kind of woman I was. I chose on my own terms and I stood behind the choice. What I could not know, standing there on that rooftop, was how quickly the world below was going to make the choice harder. The worst one came the following Sunday. Yoon-hee had organized a smaller gathering, just family plus Soo-jin and two of the neighborhood families who kept a regular rotation of these lunches. I had arrived steady and composed and ready to be exactly who I always was, which was the only version of myself I had ever brought to any of these rooms. Near the end of the meal, while Jae-won was in the kitchen helping with the dishes, Yoon-hee leaned toward Soo-jin and said, in Korean, with the complete ease of a woman who had never once considered the possibility that the woman 3 feet away understood her. At least Yuna had her family's business connections. What does this one have? A hospital job? Some foundation? It's very sweet doing charity work, but it is not serious money. It is not what this family needs beside it. I was cutting a piece of fruit. I set the knife down on the plate. For 2 years, I had heard this woman speak about me in a language she believed was private. I had heard her question my status. I had heard her compare me to a woman she preferred. I had heard her dismiss the Caldwells as a family with warmth but no history. And now I heard her call the work I had built my life around, the work I had fought for and earned, and that served tens of thousands of people in this city, sweet. I felt something shift in me. Not break, not crack, shift. The way tectonic plates shift, not with visible rupture, but with the deep, slow movement of something that has been accumulating pressure for a long time, finally beginning to move. I breathed. I thought about Grandmother Mabel. The time is not now. The time is not now. I picked up the fruit knife and finished cutting, but the composure it took to do that was the last reserve of something I had been spinning down for 2 years. And I knew, walking out to the car that afternoon with Jay Wan's hand in mine, that the balance was running close to zero. The church fundraiser came 3 weeks after the rooftop. Jay Wan and I came in together, and everything that had shifted between us was present in small ways. In how we moved through the room, in the way he stayed close, in the way I led him. But the church fundraiser was a bigger stage. The program director had introduced Yoon Hee from the lectern as one of the community's most dedicated supporters. And Yoon Hee had received that with the warm grace of a woman who had earned it. And then she had drawn me into her orbit near the reception tables the way a collector draws attention to a piece she is particularly proud of. "This is my son's, my Jaewon's," Yoon Hee said to the cluster of church board members who had gathered. "His girlfriend, my black daughter-in-law." More people this time, more witnesses. Her voice was warm and certain and entirely self-congratulatory in the way it always was, the tone of a woman who believed she was demonstrating virtue in real time. I stood in my full self and smiled and let it be received the way it was received by people who saw what they expected to see, because that was what Yoon Hee had prepared them to see. Jae Won stood beside me. He said nothing. The drive home was quiet for a long time. "It was a bigger room tonight," I said finally. He gripped the wheel. I know. "She used my race to introduce me to the church board, Jaewon, to people who make decisions about this community." "I know." "And you didn't say anything." He said, "I know." I turned toward the window and watched the street move past. There was nothing new in this. That was the most devastating part. There was nothing new in this conversation. We had been having it in different rooms on different evenings for months. "I need you to understand," I said, and my voice was very even, very deliberate, the voice I used when I needed what I was saying to land without any ambiguity, "that every time you stay silent while she does that, your silence is not neutral. It compounds it. I am standing in that room, hearing myself introduced by my race, and I am also watching the man I chose say nothing. And those two things together are louder than the introduction itself." He was quiet for so long that I thought he might not answer. "I know," he said. His voice was low. "I know all of that. And when it's happening in a room with my father's eyes on me and my mother's voice carrying and all of it pressing down, I freeze. I know I freeze. I hate that I freeze. I'm not asking you to fight. I'm asking you to say my name. I know. That's all. Just say it. Say, her name is Nora. That's it." He pulled up in front of my building and sat with his hands on the wheel, staring at the windshield. "I will," he said. "I will do better. I mean that." I believed him. I believed he meant it every time he said it. What I no longer believed entirely was that meaning it was enough. I got out of the car and went upstairs. Sung Ho's ultimatum came on a Tuesday evening. Jae-won appeared at my door looking like a man who had been carrying something heavy for too many hours. I let him in and made tea and sat across from him and waited. "My father called me into his office today," he said. I waited. "He told me that the board has been talking, that his community standing is tied to his family standing, that if I continue this relationship, he will transfer my position and my stake in the company to Minji." He looked at his tea. "He said he has been patient. He said his patience has an end." I sat with that for a moment. Park Development Group was Jae-won's professional life. The community health center project he had fought for, the work he believed in, his livelihood, his identity as an architect, all of it ran through his father's company. And his father had just put his hand on all of it. What did you say? I asked. I told him I understood the stakes. He looked up at me. I also told him that Nora Caldwell is the woman I am choosing and that I would not be told otherwise. Something moved in me at that, not resolution, not relief, something more complicated, something that said, I see you trying. And also, trying is not the same as succeeding. He's not going to move, I said. I know. And you can't keep this life and keep me if he holds that position. J1 set his tea down. I know that too. He looked at me directly. I'm not asking you to solve this. I'm telling you where I am. I defended you. He was unmoved, but I defended you. In private, I said. Yes. In his office, not in front of your mother, not in the room where she introduces me. Yes. I looked at my own tea. I know the difference between private and public defense, I said. By now I know it very well. He didn't answer that. There was no answer to give. We sat quietly for a moment. And then he said, he invited us to a dinner this weekend, the full family. Una will be there. I looked at him. He arranged it, he said. She always does. He said it with a tiredness that was the tiredness of a man who has watched a pattern so many times it no longer surprises him, only exhausts him. On the same weekend my father delivered the ultimatum, my mother arranged for Una to be at the table. The coordination of it, the deliberateness of it. I thought about what it would look like to a woman who had less patience than I had. I thought about what it felt like even to a woman who had exactly as much patience as I had, which was running close to its limits. I'll be there, I said. He reached across the table and took my hand. He held it with both of his, and I looked at his face, and I saw the man I had kissed on that rooftop, and I saw the man who had told me he loved me from the hospital parking lot, and I also saw the man who, in every room with his family, had not yet found a way to be those same things out loud. I love you, he said. Not the way he had said it before, quickly, with urgency from the hospital. He said it the way you say a thing you have thought about, measured, true. I love you. And your name is Lenora Caldwell, and you are the most extraordinary person I have ever been in a room with, and I am sorry I let her do that. I am sorry I keep letting her do that. Something in my chest opened and ached at exactly the same time. He had said all of it, right there at my kitchen table with the tea between us and the city quiet outside. He had said my name. He had said the work of what she had been doing to me. He had said sorry. And tomorrow, when we walked into that room, he would freeze. I knew it. He probably knew it too, and I could not carry the knowing of it much longer. I turned my hand over and held his. I did not say I love you back. The word was there. It had been there for months, living in the warmth of the photographs and the forest trail and the rooftop and every quiet evening that had ever been just us, but I could not send it out into a world where it would have to survive the rooms his family built around it. I hear you, I said, the way I had said it once before. I see you. He held my hand and nodded, and we sat in that particular silence that is full rather than empty, and I memorized the way it felt because some part of me was already beginning to understand that it might be running out of room to live in. The dinner that weekend was the dinner. Una was already there when we arrived, which was the architecture of it. Same as always, her presence in the room before us, her comfort with the space, signaling a belonging that had been carefully staged. Yoon-hee moved through the room in her element, managing arrangements with the ease of a woman who has been managing rooms her entire adult life and believes this is what love looks like. Minji was there too. I knew by then about the PR pitch. J1 had told me awkwardly that Minji had been trying to land a healthcare organization account and had discovered that the decision maker at the target company was a longtime colleague of mine. He had shared this with the careful tone of a man passing along information he did not fully know what to do with. Minji had said nothing to me directly. She would not say anything to me directly for some time. but I had noticed the shift in the quality of her avoidance, from confident dismissal to something more careful. She needed me. She did not yet know how to ask. I filed it and moved on. The seating placed Yuna 2 seats from Jaewon. Not directly beside him this time, a small mercy or a different kind of calculation. Sung-ho sat at the head of the table with the composed authority of a man who has played his card and is now watching his hand develop. He looked at me once during the meal with an expression I could not fully read. Not hostile, not warm. Something that might have been curiosity if you were generous with it, or assessment if you were accurate. I had arranged his cardiologist appointment. He did not know that. He would not know it for some time. Soo-jin was there. She sat across from me and gave me the warmth of a woman who had decided that performing warmth adequately was the same as providing it. At one point, while Yoon-hee was speaking with one of the other guests, Soo-jin leaned toward me with her practiced smile and said, "It is so wonderful how our Yoon-hee has embraced this situation so fully. She is really very open-minded for her generation." I looked at Soo-jin. I had been watching this woman validate every single thing Yoon-hee had done in my presence for 2 years. She had laughed at the Korean language comparisons. She had smiled at the Tolerance Trophy performance. She had been the audience for all of it. "That's very kind of you to say," I said, and smiled and turned back to my food. What I did not say. I know what she says in Korean when she thinks I can't hear her. "I have a 2-year ledger. And Soo-jin, your name is in it." After dinner, during the quiet movement of people between rooms, Soo-jin found her moment. She had been building to something all evening. I could feel it. The particular social energy of a woman who has been asked to deliver a message. She touched my arm with the gentle pressure of a woman being kind to someone beneath her. "Nora, she said, Yoon-hee really only wants what is best for the family. She is not trying to be difficult. You do not need to take these things so personally." I looked at her. "I'm sorry." "At these events, when she introduces you, some people feel sensitive about these things, but Yoon-hee means it in the most generous way. She is proud of her son and of his choices. She is really very accepting." I held Soo-jin's gaze for a moment. The room was around us. Jaewon was somewhere across it. "She introduces me by my race," I said evenly. "Every time, to every person. In 2 years, she has never introduced me by my name to anyone in this family social circle." Soo-jin's smile stayed in place. "You people," she said with the gentle patience of someone explaining something obvious, "are sometimes so sensitive about these things. It is a compliment. She is proud. You should see it for what it is." "You people." I breathed. I held it. Something settled in me that had the quality of steel. Not ice, not anger, just the particular density of a woman who has absorbed exactly as much as a woman should absorb. "Thank you for sharing that," I said, and walked away. Jaewon found me in the hallway. He had seen the conversation from across the room. He could read my face by now, and whatever he read in it when I came away from Soo-jin had brought him to me fast. "What did she say?" he asked quietly. "You people are so sensitive," I said. My voice was even. "To my face this time." He looked toward the room. Something moved in his jaw. "I'll say something." "Jaewon." I looked at him. "Don't say something to Soo-jin right now. Say it to your mother. In the room, where it counts." He held my gaze. A long moment. He went back into the room, and I watched him from the hallway, and I waited. He sat back down at the table. He did not say anything. I collected my things quietly. We drove home in a silence that was a different kind of silence from the ones before it, not heavy with potential, heavy with what had not happened, again in the exact same way it had not happened every time before. The night he asked me to apologize, it had been raining since morning. There had been a gathering at a restaurant, a birthday dinner for one of the church board members, and Yoon-hee had been there with Sung-ho and Soo-jin, and the full weight of the family social world arranged around a single long table. She had introduced me the moment I arrived to 6 new faces, her voice warm and absolute, and practicing the same physics it had practiced for 2 years. "My black daughter-in-law." I had not smiled this time. I had been warm. I had been gracious, but I had not given her the smile that said the introduction was acceptable to me. I had stood in my full self and looked at the 6 new faces with the calm directness that is the Caldwell family inheritance and let the moment be what it was. Afterward, Yoon-hee had pulled Jae-won aside. I had watched from across the room. I had seen her face. I had seen his. On the drive home, he was quiet for too long. "She said you were rude," he said finally. I looked at him. "At the introduction. She said you didn't smile and it was uncomfortable for the guests, and she felt you were making a point." "I was," I said. He gripped the wheel. "Nora, I was making the point that I'm a person, not an exhibit. I made it very quietly. I made it by simply existing with dignity in the room. She found that uncomfortable." A long pause. "Can you," he started, and then stopped. I went very still. He started again. "Can you just, this once, apologize to her? Not because you did anything wrong, but to keep the peace. For me." The rain moved across the windshield. I let the sentence sit between us for a moment. I let it be fully what it was. "Your mother," I said, very slowly, very clearly, "has introduced me by my race to 40 people in the last 2 years. 40 introductions. She has never in 2 years introduced me by my name, and you are asking me to apologize. I just want one night without a fight. I want one night where the man I chose defends me in public." I meant husband. I meant partner. I meant the person who was supposed to be standing beside me. "We have been waiting on different things." He was silent. "I love you," I said, and I did. That part was entirely, absolutely true, and I needed him to know it before I said the rest. "I love you, but I cannot be with someone who values Semyon more than my dignity. Not anymore." The word hung in the car. Semyon. Face. Public harmony. The thing he had chosen over and over in every room where it mattered. I said it in Korean. He had not known I knew the word. He turned to look at me. I looked back at him with the face of a woman who had been waiting 2 years for the moment to use exactly this word in exactly this sentence. "Not anymore," I said again, and I got out of the car. The rain was steady and cool on my face. I did not slam the door. I walked to my building entrance and I went inside. No scene, no tears in the hallway, no performance of heartbreak for anyone to witness. I was not performing. I was simply done. There's a difference between leaving in anger and leaving in clarity. Anger is loud. Anger has an opposite, a reaction, a need for response. Clarity is quiet. It asks nothing from the other person. It just opens the door and walks through it. I went upstairs. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. The city outside was doing what it always did, moving through itself without noticing. I thought about the rooftop and his hand near my face. I thought about the forest trail and the way he had said that makes complete sense. I thought about 2 years of Korean language insults absorbed in silence and dinners eaten in the company of a woman who had never, not once, called me by my name. I picked up my phone and called my mother. "Mama," I said. "Baby," she said, and that was enough. She has always been able to hear exactly what I need from a single word. "I'm coming home," I said. "Your room is ready," she said. She did not ask. She did not explain. She had been waiting for this call the way mothers wait for the calls they see coming. I was in Savannah by Thursday evening. Grandmother Mabel's house on East Gaston Street was the same as it always was, warm and solid and smelling of the particular combination of her kitchen and the old woodwork and 50 years of people having important conversations in every room. She met me at the door without surprise. "You look well," she said. "I'm tired," I said. That's the same thing at a certain point. She took my coat. "Come eat something." I sat at the kitchen table that had heard every important Caldwell conversation for 3 generations, and I let my grandmother feed me, and I told her what I needed to tell her. Not everything. Mabel Caldwell does not require everything. She requires the truth of what you are carrying, which is a different kind of everything. She listened with the patience of a woman who has been doing this for decades. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and looked at me with those eyes, the ones that see through things. "Do you love him?" she said. "Yes," I said. "Do you believe he can become what you need?" I thought about that for a long time, about the car and the apology request, about the rooftop and the first kiss and the private declaration at my kitchen table, about every moment he had almost found his voice and then gone quiet. "I don't know," I said. Mabel nodded. "Then you're in the right place," she said. "This house is where you come when you don't know. You sit here and you let yourself not know, and the answer comes when it's ready." I looked at her across the table, 82 years old and the most certain person I had ever met. "He has some work to do," I said. "Yes," she said, "and so do you." She reached across the table and covered my hand. "But not tonight. Tonight, you just come home." I breathed in the kitchen, the woodwork, and the warmth, and for the first time in weeks, something in my chest let go of its grip. He did not call right away. He waited 3 days, which told me he was sitting with it the way I had hoped he would, not reacting, but processing. On the 3rd day, he texted, "I understand why you left. I'm not asking you to come back yet. I just want you to know I hear you." I wrote back, "I hear you too." And I meant it. What happened next he told me later, and I believed him when he told it, because it was the kind of thing that only happens when a person has finally stopped calculating and started moving. He went to his mother. Not to the family, not to Sung Ho or Minji, to Yoon Hee alone in the kitchen, where she felt most herself and most in control. Now, he told her, "You have introduced Nora as your black daughter-in-law 40 times in 2 years. You have never called her by her name in front of another person. Her name is Lenora. Say her name." Yoon Hee had looked at him with the expression of a woman who had never been told this kind of thing by her eldest son. She had opened her mouth and he had waited. And whatever she had been preparing to say, the redirect about sensitivity, the defense about culture, the appeal to tradition, it did not come out. What came out was Lenora. Just that. Said quietly into the kitchen to no one, because there was no audience to make it mean anything yet. Just the word in his mother's voice for the first time. He told me it was not enough. He was right. It was not enough. It was the first brick of a wall that needed to be built from the ground in public, and it would take more than one word in a private kitchen to make it real. But it was the first brick. And I sat in Grandmother Mabel's kitchen on East Gaston Street in Savannah, Georgia, and I thought about what a first brick meant, whether it was the beginning of something or just the beginning of more waiting. I did not yet know. The answer was still making its way to me. Outside, the oak tree that had been in the yard since my grandmother's time moved in the evening air, the same as it always had, patient and enormous and entirely indifferent to any timeline but its own. I was still waiting, but the waiting was different now. Something had cracked open in him or in the situation or in both. I could not see the shape of it yet, but I could feel it. The invitation came on a Thursday morning through the foundation's event coordination team, and I saw my name on the attendee list before I saw anything else about it. Korean Community Charity Gala, annual benefit, Meridian Health Foundation primary sponsor. I put the printout down on my desk. Yoon Hee's social world, her church board, her community foundation, the circle of people for whom her opinion was the authority on what was proper and what was not. The room where her tolerance trophy performance had the longest runway and the most appreciative audience. I was attending professionally. I had approved the sponsorship 8 months ago. I was on the program. I did not call J1 about it. We were still in that particular suspended state, not together, not fully separate. The space he had asked me to give him and that I was still against my better judgment, given. His text was still in my phone. I hear you too. I had meant it when I sent it. I still meant it. But I was not going to the gala for him. I was going because it was my job. The venue was in Buckhead, a hotel ballroom polished to the kind of brightness that announced money without discussing it. I arrived in time to meet briefly with the events team, confirm the program sequence, and take my place in the early reception hour. I had dressed the way I always dress for professional events, with the particular care of a woman who has learned that what you wear to a room is the first sentence of every conversation you will have in it. Something navy, something that carried weight. I was talking with the director of one of our longtime grantee organizations when I felt the shift in the room that happens when a social center of gravity enters it. I did not look immediately. I knew who it would be. Yoon-hee Park moved through her community the way she always moved through it, with the ease of a woman who believed entirely in her own welcome. She was in coral and pearls, Sung-ho beside her, measured and composed, Minji a step behind, already scanning the room with the professional eye of a woman calculating her next move. And Soo-jin, Yoon-hee's shadow, steady at her left side where she had always been. I turned back to my conversation. I had decided, somewhere over the 2 weeks in Savannah, that I was not going to manage anything tonight. I was not going to manage my expression or my position in the room or who saw me first or how the sequence of events unfolded. I had done enough managing. The night would be what it was going to be. I found out where Jaewon was when I heard his voice. He was 30 feet away near the West Bar, speaking with someone from a development nonprofit I recognized. I did not look immediately. When I finally did, he was already looking at me. He had that expression, the one that had always been the private version of him before the family and the weight of it arrived and put its hand on his face. He nodded once. I nodded back. That was all. That was enough for now. Yoon-hee found me in the second hour. I was moving between clusters of guests, doing what I was there to do, which was to be visible and useful in a room full of people my organization supported. I had spoken with 4 program directors, confirmed a meeting that had been pending for 2 months, and was navigating toward the drinks table when I heard her voice at my shoulder. Nora. I turned. Yoon-hee had her hand already extended toward my arm, the gesture she always used, that particular proprietary warmth that positioned her as the center of every introduction. Beside her was a woman I did not know, but whose bearing and the name badge she wore told me she was someone who mattered in this room. Head of a community health initiative, the kind of person who made grant decisions, the kind of person Yoon-hee would very much want to impress. You must meet someone important, Yoon-hee said, and her hand found my arm the way it always did, light and certain. She turned to the woman with her brightest smile. This is my son's wife, my black daughter-in-law. The same words, the same pause, the same performance on the same stage for the same audience, for the last time. The woman's face moved, not with the social warmth Yoon-hee was expecting, not with the polite interest that usually followed the introduction. Something else happened, a recognition, the kind that crosses from courtesy into genuine surprise. I'm sorry, the woman said. She looked at me more carefully. Yeah, you mean Dr. Lenora Caldwell, the executive director of the Meridian Health Foundation? Yoon-hee's smile held. Yes, she works at the hospital. She's in healthcare. She doesn't just work at the hospital. The woman's voice was clear and unheard. Dr. Caldwell runs the foundation's entire philanthropic division. Her organization is the primary sponsor of this event tonight. A brief pause. Her signature is on the grant our program has been operating on for 3 years. We have been trying to get a formal meeting with her office for 6 months. She turned to me, not to Yoon-hee. She extended her hand to me, and the gesture was not polite accommodation. It was recognition, peer recognition. Dr. Caldwell, she said, it is an honor to finally meet you in person. I took her hand. The work your program is doing in the West Side Corridor is exactly what we want to support, I said. We should find time to talk tonight. Yes, she said, with the particular brightness of someone who has wanted this conversation for months. Absolutely, yes. The room had ears. It always has ears. I felt the radius of awareness spread outward from us, the way sound moves through water, invisible and immediate. The cluster nearest to us had stopped their own conversation. The couple to the left had oriented. 3 people along the drinks table had caught the moment and were now performing the particular social calculus of people who have just understood that they have been reading a room incorrectly. I did not look at Yoon Hee, not yet. I looked at the program director and I gave her my full attention, the way I give anyone my full attention, completely and without performance. We spoke for 2 minutes. I handed her my card. She took it with both hands. When I finally turned, the circle around Yoon Hee had reorganized itself. Her face was a thing I had waited 2 years to see. Not destroyed, not embarrassed in the theatrical way of someone caught in an obvious lie. Something more precise. The expression of a woman who has been performing a certain role with total confidence in front of a specific audience for a very long time, and who has just discovered that the audience has been watching a different performance than the one she thought she was giving. Her smile was still there, the structure of it, but the confidence behind it had drained out somewhere in the last 90 seconds, quietly, like water leaving through a seam she did not know existed. Soojin was recalibrating in real time. I could see it, the small adjustments, the reassessment visible in her eyes. The woman who had called me "you people" to my face now processing what it meant that the woman she had said that to signed the funding that kept half this room's programs alive. Minji was very still. Sung Ho, standing a few feet behind Yoon Hee, had the expression of a man whose practical calculations have just been handed a variable he did not account for. The hierarchy had shifted. 30 seconds. That was all it took. Yoon Hee turned to Soojin. I was not looking directly at them. I did not need to. I knew the gesture, the slight turn of the shoulder, the exclusion of the angle, the signal between the two of them that meant the conversation was shifting to the channel they believed was safe. Yoon Hee said in Korean, low and certain, "Gredo uri jibanen olyo." She still doesn't fit our family. 2 years. 2 years of that voice. 4 overheard moments across every family gathering, every dinner, every Sunday lunch, where she had leaned toward Soojin with the easy confidence of a woman who believed she was invisible to the person she was speaking about. She carries herself like she thinks she is someone. She is ambition, but ambition is not family. Her family is from Georgia, Southern people, church warmth, but no real history. What does this one have? A hospital job, some foundation. It is very sweet doing charity work. I had filed every word. I had held every word. I had stood in room after room with the weight of every one of those sentences, setting down knives and picking them up again, standing in hallways breathing, bringing my composure back from the edge of its limit again and again. The time is not now, Grandmother Mabel's voice had said across every room, every season, every gathering. I turned toward Eun-hee. I looked at her directly, and in Korean, in the clearest voice I had, I said, "Iyomiyoni, sunyong dongan 다 들었어요. 전부 다요." Mother, I've heard everything for 2 years. All of it. The silence that followed was a different kind of silence, not the social pause of a room absorbing surprising information, something deeper. The particular silence of a room full of Korean people who have just recalculated the entire history of the last 2 years in the space of a single sentence. Every aside, every muttered comparison, every Korean language insult delivered with the comfortable certainty that the room was divided into those who could hear and those who could not. All of it. Yoon-hee's face went white, not pale, white, the way skin goes when the blood has been called somewhere else urgently, when the body is processing something the mind is still refusing to believe. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. Soojin had gone very still beside her. The woman who had laughed at things, Yoon-hee said in Korean. The woman who had delivered, "You people are so sensitive to my face." Soojin standing in this room, now understanding exactly how long I had been listening and exactly what I had heard her agree to. The professional reveal had shown them my status. The Korean reveal showed them my restraint. I had heard every word, I had understood every word, and I had chosen for 2 years to say nothing and to stay and to wait for the man beside me to find his voice before I needed to use mine. I had the weapon the entire time. I never used it, not once, not until now. And even now, I had not weaponized it. I had simply stated a fact. That was all. That was the Caldwell way. You don't tell people who you are. You let them find out. They had found out. I held Yoon-hee's gaze for exactly 1 moment. Then I turned back to the room. I did not gloat. Grandmother Mabel did not raise a woman who gloats. But somewhere in my chest, something that had been holding its breath for 2 years finally exhaled. The donor acknowledgement portion of the program came 40 minutes later. I was at the foundation's designated table speaking with a board member when the program host invited the evening's major contributors to the stage area for recognition. It was the standard event sequence: applause for the organizations, a few brief words. I expected nothing beyond that. I heard his voice before I saw him. Jaewon was at the microphone stand. He had not been scheduled. He was not on the program. He was an attendee, a Park Development Group representative at a gala that Park Development Group co-sponsored at a level that did not come with speaking time. He had simply, at some point in the last 40 minutes, made a decision and walked to the microphone. He did not look nervous. That was the first thing I noticed. In 2 years, in every room that had mattered, in every moment where his voice could have made a difference, I had watched him go quiet with the particular stillness of a man bracing against the weight of every expectation pressing down on him. I had watched him freeze. He was not frozen. He stood at that microphone like a man who had made up his mind sometime before tonight and had simply been waiting for the right moment to act on it. He looked at the room. Then he looked at me. Before we closed the acknowledgments piece, he said, "I'd like to properly introduce someone most of you already know professionally, but I have never had the chance to introduce her by her full name in a room like this one the way she deserves." The room settled. The particular attention of people who have sensed something real is about to happen. My wife, Dr. Lenora Caldwell, Executive Director of the Meridian Health Foundation. He said each word with the deliberate care of a man who understood the weight of each one. The work she does makes half of what we are celebrating tonight possible. I am proud to stand next to her. A breath. "And I am sorry," he said, "that it took me this long to say that out loud." The room responded with the kind of warmth that a room gives when something true has just been said in it. But I was not here in the room. I was hearing him. He had said my name. Dr. Lenora Caldwell, not my wife, not someone. My name, my title, my work. He had named the thing that I had spent 2 years watching be erased in room after room, and he had named it in the exact space where the erasure had happened, in front of the exact audience who had witnessed every prior silence. The embedded apology was in the word tonight. The admission was in the word sorry, but the real apology was in the fact that he was standing at that microphone at all, in this room, in front of these people, saying my name when he did not have to, when no one had asked him to, when the choice was entirely and completely his. He had chosen. Something in my chest broke open in the particular way that things break open when they have been held under too much pressure for too long and the pressure is suddenly completely released. I was not going to cry in this ballroom. That was not who I was. But the warmth that moved through me was the warmth of something I had waited for longer than I had ever let myself admit. Not the professional recognition, not the Korean reveal, not any of the moments tonight that the audience would remember and retell. Him, just him, then at a microphone, saying my name, he stepped back from the podium. The program host moved the evening forward. I looked at Jaewon across the room. He was looking at me, not with the asking expression, not with the "will you forgive me" that I had dreaded seeing, with the expression of a man who had done the thing finally cleanly and was simply waiting to see what it meant between us now. To my left, I became aware of Yoon-hee. She had heard every word. She would not have been able to avoid hearing every word. Her son had stood at a microphone in her social world in front of the community she had performed her tolerance for, and he had said the name she had never once used to introduce me in 2 years, and he had said it proudly, and he had said it was his. Sung-ho had heard. Minji had heard. I did not look at them. I looked at Jae-won, and across 30 feet of ballroom and 2 years of silence and one first brick laid in a private kitchen in every room we had ever stood in together. I held that look for a moment. Then I looked away. Near the exit, I noticed Han Yuna. She had been at the event. She had been in the periphery of the room for most of the evening, as she had always been, in orbit, present, beautiful, representing the version of the future that Yoon-hee had spent 2 years trying to install. She had been watching when Jae-won took the microphone. She had heard what he said. She had seen his face when he said it. She was not looking at the stage anymore. She was looking at the floor with the particular expression of a woman who has just understood something she had been hoping was not true. She picked up her clutch. She said something quiet to the woman beside her. She walked toward the exit, and her steps were unhurried, composed, dignified. She did not look back. I watched her go, and I felt something I had not expected. Not triumph, not satisfaction, something closer to sorrow for the kind of being kept in orbit that was never fair to her either. The woman who had been placed at tables and positioned in doorways for 2 years as an instrument of pressure. She had not chosen that role any more than I had chosen mine. She left, and the gala moved on, and the music returned, and the room began its slow transition from program to reception, and the evening was not over. But something in it was. Something that had needed to be over for a very long time. I did not linger at the gala. After Jae-won stepped back from the microphone, I finished the conversations that needed finishing, said goodbye to the foundation staff, and walked to the valet with the calm of a woman who has been waiting a long time for a weight to lift. The night air was cool. I stood in it for a moment. 2 years, 40-odd introductions, every Korean aside absorbed and filed. I did not gloat. Grandmother Mabel did not raise a woman who gloats. What I felt was something quieter, closer to the feeling of setting down a burden you have been carrying so long that you forgot the shape of your own arms without it. The gala had confirmed what I always was. Jae-won's voice in that room had given me something the recognition alone could not. I left the city behind me on the drive south and let myself be still. The grant renewal crossed my desk on a Tuesday morning. 8 days later, in the ordinary course of my work, Yoon-hee's foundation board had applied for their annual renewal 3 weeks before the gala happened. My program team evaluated it on the merits, the way they evaluated everything, against our criteria, against documented outcomes. The renewal was approved. I signed the letter with the foundation standard letterhead and my full name at the bottom and sent it to grants management. No note, no message, no conditions. I thought about her opening that envelope, reading the letterhead and then reading the signature, understanding what it meant that the woman she had reduced at 40-odd gatherings, the woman she had spoken over in Korean for 2 years, had looked at her foundation's application and simply done her job. Just the merits, just the truth of who I was. Grandmother Mabel's voice quiet in my memory. You don't tell people who you are. You let them find out. They had found out. And I had not changed a single thing about myself in the process. I heard about Sung-ho through Jae-won. His father had been reviewing records on his community development projects and recognized the Meridian name on the funding documents. He recognized it from the gala program. He made the connection. And then Jae-won told him about the cardiology appointment. Sung-ho had not known. When he collapsed last spring and the ambulance was coming, Nora had been on the phone before anyone else, navigating the specialist wait list through contacts built over years of philanthropic work, moving his appointment from a 6-week delay to 4 days. He had not known she had helped the man who was using every lever he had to end her marriage. J1 said his father sat with that information for a long time. What he finally said was, "I was wrong about her." 4 words, practical and exact. He acknowledged the fact and adjusted his position to match the new information, the way a man does when the calculations he trusted have been overturned by harder facts. He asked J1 for my number directly. Minji's request came through J1 as well. Her PR firm had a major healthcare pitch in 3 weeks. The decision maker was my direct colleague at Meridian. She was asking whether I might be willing to make an introduction. "Tell her yes," I said. "I'll send an email this afternoon." J1 went quiet for a moment. "That's it?" "That's it." I set down my coffee. "She needs an introduction. I can give her one. The work will do the rest." Nora: "I'm not doing it for Minji," I said. "I'm doing it because it's the right call professionally, and because I'm not in the business of withholding help out of spite." A pause. "But if she crops me out of one more family photo, I will notice." He laughed, the laugh that always caught him off guard, and reached his eyes first. "Understood." I sent the email. Minji never excluded me from the group chat again. Sujin's shift I witnessed at a church gathering 3 weeks after the gala. She crossed the room when she saw me, not with the performance of a woman demonstrating her changed behavior, but simply with the matter-of-fact manner of someone who has recalibrated. "Nora," she said, "it's good to see you. My name, first and only." "You as well, Sujin," I said. We spoke for 10 minutes about a community garden project. She asked about a small Meridian grant. I told her how to submit a letter of inquiry. She thanked me and meant it. I did not look at Yoon-hee while this was happening. I could feel the weight of it anyway. Yoon-hee watching her closest validator treat me as a professional peer. "The loss of your mirror is its own punishment." Jaewon came to Savannah on a Saturday. He called and asked, and I said yes. He had proven the point at the microphone. What I needed to see was whether that man was still present in a quiet Saturday without the audience and the adrenaline, whether the change was structural or situational. Grandmother Mabel opened the door before he knocked. She looked at him the way she looks at everyone, completely, without performance. "You're J1, she said. "Yes, ma'am." "My granddaughter told me about you. Most of it, I suspect." "Probably the parts that were hardest to say," he offered. The corner of her mouth moved. "Come in. I'll make coffee." He sat at the kitchen table where I had done homework as a girl and spoke to Grandmother Mabel with the full attention he had shown me the night we met, genuinely curious rather than polite. She asked 3 questions that sounded like small talk and were not. He answered honestly. He came back 3 Saturdays in a row, helped my mother move a bookcase that had been in the wrong place for 7 years, received Auntie Pat's sweet potato pie, and her declaration of acceptability. We found our way back in the language we had always spoken in private, 2 people who had kept choosing each other, knowing the full cost. He never missed an induction again, not once. Grandmother Mabel arrived at the Park family gathering in September the way she arrives everywhere, without announcement and without apology, with the unhurried dignity of a woman who has earned the right to enter any room she chooses. She wore lilac. She walked into that house like she had been expected. Jaewon introduced her. Sung-ho shook her hand with the genuine effort of a man making a real correction. Minji went quiet with the instinct of someone recognizing too late what they had dismissed. And then Grandmother Mabel turned to Yoon-hee. She looked at her for a moment completely, and in Korean, clear and warm and natural, she said, "Du bun jal jineshosoyo?" "Have you both been well?" The room went still, the way rooms go when the ground shifts without anyone moving. Yoon-hee's face did what it had done at the gala, that specific expression of a woman who must recalculate something she believed was settled. But this time something different lived underneath the surprise, something slower, something that looked like the beginning of understanding. 2 matriarchs in the same room, one who had built her power through status and hierarchy, one who had built hers through land and love and service, and a family that had refused to be reduced through 100 years of people trying. The contrast required no speech. They spoke for a while in Korean in the gracious manner that Mabel brings to every room. Nothing pointed, just two women talking in a language Yoon-hee had believed was hers alone to use. The church charity event came 6 weeks later. My name was third on the donor and keynote list. The women who had ignored me at church gatherings for 2 years were in the audience. I walked to the podium and gave the speech I always give about the work and why it matters, without notes, with the confidence of someone who has been making this argument for 15 years. The applause was warm and long. 20 minutes later, in the reception hour, I heard Yoon-hee's voice carrying the introducing brightness I had known for 2 years. She was moving toward a woman from the choir board, someone whose opinion mattered in this circle. And then I heard what she said. Ijogan Himyunuri, Lenora Yeo. This is my daughter-in-law, Lenora. I stood very still. No racial modifier, no category before my name. Just Lenora, just her daughter-in-law, said in the room and the community and the language where the reduction had always happened, said the way it should have been said 40-odd times before this. Earned, not given. I knew which this was because I had watched what broke her open. Not the professional reveal, not the Korean reveal, the grant renewal, her signature on that letter arriving without retaliation, the proof that the woman she had reduced had simply done her job. Grace is the thing that breaks people who cannot be broken by force. Grandmother Mabel told me that. I had believed it and practiced it for 2 years. It was enough. I found Jae-won across the room. He was already looking at me, not with the asking expression, not with apology behind his eyes, with the look I had known from the beginning, complete and unhurried and warm, the private version of him that existed before the weight of every family expectation arrived and put its hand on his face. 2 years of overheard insults, 2 years of introductions that erased my name, 2 years of choosing grace when retaliation would have been faster, 2 years of carrying what I should not have had to carry alone. It was over. Not the way a storm ends, the way morning comes gradually, the darkness not chased away, but simply replaced by light that was always going to arrive. I raised my chin the small amount that Grandmother Mabel raises hers when something has been settled to her satisfaction. He crossed the room, not in a hurry. There was no hurry left. His hand found mine without ceremony, the natural weight of it, and we stood together in the warm light of that September evening, with his mother 10 feet away using Manam correctly, with the future open and entirely ours. You don't tell people who you are. You let them find out. They had found out, and I was exactly where I was always going to end up, standing in the full truth of everything I am, beside the man who chose to stand there with me. That was enough. That was everything.